you dug into the first time when you went into Bunker 21 was probably the closest you ever were to escaping. That's because the bunker tunnel only leads deeper in, so this cave was in fact the way back that collapsed under the pressure of the roots. Keep in mind as well, the dream in your apartment, there was a TV broadcast talking about stars falling from the sky and falling into the palm of your hand, the same shiny stones that you'd pick up. I believe when the being impacted into the planet, it did hit the forest of Darkwood. And because we know the main way it functions is by copying and replicating everything around it, it assimilated the forest, so only around 10 to 20% of the actual forest was real. And then after the forest, it moved on to replicating everything around the forest, including the homes, people, and animals. But during this assimilation, something went wrong. The closer you get to the center of the Darkwood, the more corrupted everything is around it. From stray dogs to big dogs to chompers to human centipedes.
Then Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White.
The being is an alien entity. I mean, that's pretty apparent. And like most animals, it just wanted to survive. It was making the forest even bigger. It was seemingly bringing people back from the dead. But these people probably never would have died if the being never landed on the earth in the first place. And on top of that as well, an animal needs food. Hence why it drew so many people to the center to turn them into sleepers, giving them a blissful dream of their best fantasies. But in exchange, slowly killing them, making them fall into a coma until they were basically just a shriveled up corpse with no energy left. If anything, it draws parallels to the Zone in the 2018 film Annihilation. This ever-expanding zone that didn't have any malicious intent, but still caused mass death and devastation to everyone inside it. It couldn't be understood, it was completely alien, and if it went unchecked, it would have definitely consumed most of the planet. The reason why the plague affected people so differently is because it was an alien trying to understand how bodies worked. Maybe it was infecting them to weaken them so there'd be a better food source. Maybe the only reason some turn into chompers is because of a deep-rooted hatred, especially within the villagers, and you can see many of them turning into chompers, mostly because there is a huge food shortage. And some are even hinted to turning into cannibals just to survive. If it really does want to beckon people closer to the center so they can be broken down and used as a food source, why is getting to the center so difficult? The talking tree, for example, directly blocks the way to get to the being, but that is a creation of the being itself. I don't think it's a malevolent entity with a huge grand plan. I just think it's something that's confused and lost. I don't even think it has the ability to have a conscience apart from just basic survival instincts. All it really wants to do is feed, and by putting people into a blissful trance in the process, well, that serves both parties. Most people that are called to the being aren't actually called by the being itself, but more a placeholder. With the doctor, it was his daughter, and for many people in the game, it's a loved one that they haven't seen in a long time, either because they died or got cut off from the woods. The being itself is completely incapable of any kind of speech, only being able to communicate through radios, and most of the time it makes no sense, and its basic dialogue more like echoes of people that it previously killed and assimilated, almost as if it has no real free thought of its own. And I think that's the point of the being. It's not meant to be something that's understood. It's simply an invader in the planet that's just doing its best to survive, creating honey-like comb structures and luring people to the center so it can feed off them. The government knew about this for a while, and thankfully they were able to cordon off the Darkwood so it didn't spread any further. Stop! But it really does bring to question what would happen if the being went unchecked. It would probably start replicating inorganic structures as well. We already saw that the hideouts were being replicated, so it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that it would start replicating entire block buildings. And that might have actually happened if you weren't there to burn down the being and the entirety of the forest. If anything, it reminds me of the game Prey that came out in 2017. Spoiler alert, during that game you explored a space station while having to deal with this alien pathogen called the Typhon. But you actually later found out that the Typhon were able to spread to Earth and pretty much contaminate the entire planet. But to be fair, in Prey, there was no Polish man with a flamethrower, so... And with that, the game is pretty much done. There's really nothing more to talk about. I could sit here for hours just rambling on about the being and its true intentions, but again, the devs have kept that purposely vague. And I do stand by the theory that the being is not something malevolent, it just wants to survive. Also, while probably trying to understand the planet that it's inhabited. One thing I do want to talk about more in the game is cut content. While making this video, I reached out to the devs regarding some technical stuff relating to the game. One of those things was getting access to the dev mode to let us record footage easier. By easier, I mean we wouldn't have to replay 7 hours of footage to get a single line of dialogue.
Devil, fuck! Your mother!
The dev mode also lets you spawn any item in the entire game, including a bunch that never made it to the final release. Some of these items, I can totally understand why they were cut because they are just absolutely game-breaking. An interesting cut item is the noise law, which is kind of an obvious mechanic for any survival horror. With noise laws, you'd be able to precision target where you want to bait an enemy. You might ask, why am I putting this completely normal item in the very obviously joke section? Well, the item is unfinished, and for some reason, this is the placeholder sound it plays. What's even better, there's more variations of this sound. Like, they genuinely went the extra mile for a fart joke. This is exactly what I mean by peak game design. To go with this, you also get a fart pillow, which would no doubt be the most broken item in the game if it were added, so I understand why they tried to keep this amazing power contained. There's also a kebab, which instantly restores you to full health, which is only fair considering Acid Wizard apparently lived off kebabs for a long time while working on Darkwood. And to finish it off, there's a straight-up acid pill in the game. Get it? Because Acid Wizard Studio.
This is not funny, Pyro. Death to inflation form.
I was really hesitant on taking this, especially because in another game I covered, Cruelty Squad, you could take pills and 9 times out of 10, it would just end up breaking the game in a really bad way, like shrinking you down so you couldn't complete levels, or flipping the world upside down so you got stuck in a single room. But this pill gives you insane stat buffs for an amount of time that's not really long enough for me to bother measuring. And also, on top of that, makes you die in one hit. So if this was a legit item in the game, I imagine it was probably used as some kind of like glass cannon speedrun. There is one more thing in the game that happens much earlier, but I chose to ignore it until now. Back at the beginning, when you started the game, you might remember the option to tick something marked as Indiegogo content. So this doesn't actually impact the game at all, apart from putting an additional dream into the pool. You'll wake up in a hallway and you can only go to a single open door. Walking in, you can see a small apartment along with 3 desks and some sick multi-monitor PC setups. This is the creator's office dream, a recreation of the Acid Wizard Studios office. You can find a lot of pictures lying around, photos of the devs, their families, and lots of other people associated with Darkwood's production, random food items, and what even looks like concept art. As for the Indiegogo part of the dream, there's a book you have to find to be able to exit the dream, which serves as a thank you to all of Darkwood's supporters. It's a very cool way of thanking the community, and it's interesting seeing the dev's office remade in their own game. There's also a couple of funny bits in the dream, thanks to the protagonist commenting on what he sees, like him not being able to recognize a modern electric stove because those didn't exist back in 1987. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can find here that would have me reading all the text out on screen, but it's definitely worth checking out yourself. More on the devs themselves, they are genuinely great people. I met up with them to interview them for this video, and they've been nothing but helpful with basically anything we asked about. And you can still see their dedication to Darkwood. Even though they have talked about lore a couple of times on various AMAs, they never give out anything outright to preserve the mystery around the game. This was also the case with our interview, and also the reason why I mark out everything lore-wise as a theory rather than fact. This air of mystery is integral to Darkwood's atmosphere and unique feel, and I can only respect the developers for keeping it up after so many years. So you might wonder what's next for them. Since Darkwood, they've released another game, Soccer Kids, which is described as a game about soccer made by people who suck at playing soccer. You suck! The game's in early access right now on Steam for free, and it looks pretty good. It's got a lot of good reviews when it came out, but obviously there's no way I can sugarcoat it. This is the furthest away from Darkwood you could ever get. It's also set in 90s Poland. Darkwood was obviously a huge success for Acid Wizard, but also it took a huge toll on them, as the project overtook their personal lives while they were working on it.
The production process was like really arduous for us. It was long. It was 5 years. A lot of it was crunch. We made a lot of promises during our crowdfunding campaign, and it was just too much for 3 guys to handle, you know?
Yeah. Finishing the project was for sure like the most stressful thing. And pressure, yeah, we made so many promises after the campaign, so it was hard to do it
to fulfill everything.
Yeah, as good as we said it will be.
Since releasing Soccer Kids, they've gone on a hiatus from game design. And honestly, they definitely deserve a break. They've made what can genuinely only be called a masterpiece, and I can only wish them well for the future. And again, I really want to thank the devs for both the help they provided with the video and for making such a unique and frankly insane game. I really don't think there's a single game out there that can replicate the experience of Darkwood.
So what would you think like the main legacy of Darkwood is now? Because it's obviously been cemented as like a really successful game. Like, I mean, there's so many video essays talking about it, people that have beat me to it. But, you know, like what would you think is going to happen with the game going ahead?
That's a very hard question for me. I don't know how to answer the legacy part because I don't know. I think I'm not the right person to answer this. It's up to other people to answer it.
Like you said, many people are like making video essays about it, and it's like very cool for us to watch it, that they're like spending their time to analyze it, and like they treat it with a much respect, and it's very cool for us. This game is a niche game. Everyone who wants to play it played it already, but it all the time it's changing. Like the game is
like more people are finding the game.
Yeah, and it's like very shocking. It's really awesome to have these people who are like really fan of this game and they're like making, for example, Wikipedia or some additional stuff.
Admins on the wiki page of Darkwood, they met there and they formed a relationship, and they got married, and she moved in from the USA to Finland.
They got married over Darkwood?
Yeah.
That's lit.
Yeah. It's a real story.
What happens to Darkwood is that I think we will continue developing the world. Maybe not ourselves, but with cooperation with some very talented people in other media. What Darkwood is unique is that it's a niche within a niche. It's like a horror, but it's also pixelated, it's retro, it's from a top-down perspective. And I think it's like one of the first games which kind of utilize this perspective to have this effect. So when a lot of people see it, and you can see on the reviews on Steam and whatnot, that people, you know, say that, hey, I saw this game, I didn't believe that it could be so atmospheric and scary, but then I tried it, and indeed it's really fucking scary. So I would really like for other games to kind of maybe delve into it further, because I don't think I think there's a lot more to say, a lot more things to be said in this perspective.
Yeah. Shit, that's everything. Fuck.
So all in all, that is Darkwood, one of the best games I've ever experienced. Top-down games just don't do it for me. I just think they're bedtime. But a game like that has immersed me and just done such a fantastic job at keeping me engaged throughout. I know there have been like a billion video essays on this game. I swear there's like another one every single month. It was so difficult to try to add anything that other people didn't do because they did amazing jobs. That's why I came out here in the middle of Sweden in the snow, despite the fact that there is no snow in Darkwood whatsoever. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. That's it. Go buy the game. It's really good.
Polub is subscribey.
Sparking Zero just put a whole new update out that is going to apparently fix Yajirobe and the classic controllers glitch, which, if you didn't know, would switch your classic controls to modern mid-game depending on who you're playing. If the other person had modern controllers set up, it would totally mess up your classic controls. So we're gonna go test that out right now and see if it actually is fixed. Do me a favor, guys, like and subscribe for videos like this. I'm up dumb early just to check this update. So let's get into the actual game. As you can see, our lineup is full of broken things that we're gonna test, like Yajirobe Sensubin. Now we want to also see if they silent updated anything like after image. So I threw on Pan, see if after image strike was nerfed at all. We have Broly on to see if the key blast spam was nerfed at all, and we have Hercule to see if the spamming of the presence is still as bad, which I haven't posted my video on yet, so we'll see. But let's get into the game. All right, someone else is also on the game. Nice.
Chapter 6. Guan Yin comes to the feast and asks the reason why. The little sage uses his might to subdue the great sage. We shall leave for the moment the heavenly generals making their encirclement and the soundly sleeping great sage. The story goes on to tell how the compassionate and merciful miraculous savior from suffering, the Bodhisattva Guan Yin of Mount Potoraka in the Southern Sea, having been invited by the Queen Mother to the Peach Banquet, went to the precious pavilions at the Jade Pool with her great disciple, Huion the Novice. She found the place deserted, and the banquet ruined. The few immortals present were not sitting at their places, but holding confused discussions. When greetings were over, the immortals gave the Bodhisattva an account of what had happened. If there is to be no banquet and no drinking, said the Bodhisattva, you had better all come with me to the Jade Emperor. The immortals were delighted to follow her, and when they arrived before the Hall of Universal Brightness, the 4 heavenly teachers, the Barefoot Immortal, and many others were all there to greet the Bodhisattva. They told her that the Jade Emperor had sent heavenly armies to capture the demon, but they had not yet returned. I wish to see the Jade Emperor, said the Bodhisattva, so may I trouble you to inform him on my behalf? The heavenly teacher Kui Hongji then went to the Hall of Miraculous Mist, and the Bodhisattva was invited in. She found that Lord Laozi was there in the place of honor, and that the Queen Mother was behind him. The Bodhisattva went in at the head of the others, and when she had done obeisance to the Jade Emperor, she greeted Laozi and the Queen Mother. After they had all sat down, she asked what happened at the Peach Banquet. The banquet is held every year, and it is normally a very happy occasion, the Jade Emperor replied. But this year that monkey fiend wrecked it, so that your invitation was worth nothing. Where does this monkey fiend come from? Asked the Bodhisattva. He was born from a stone egg on the mountain of flowers and fruit in the land of Aulai in the eastern continent of Superior Body, the Jade Emperor answered. When he was born, golden beams flashed from his eyes that reached to the Star Palace. At first, we paid no attention to him, but later on he became a spirit, subduing dragons and tigers, and erasing his own name from the registers of death. The Dragon Kings and King Yama of the underworld informed us of this in memorials, and we wanted to capture him, but the Star of Longevity memorialized that in the 3 worlds, all beings with 9 orifices can become immortals. We therefore extended education to the worthy by summoning him to the upper world and appointing him protector of the horses in the imperial stable. But this was not good enough for the scoundrel who rebelled against heaven. We sent Heavenly King Li and Prince Neza to accept his surrender, extended him an amnesty, and summoned him back to the upper world. We made him a great sage equaling heaven, though this carried no salary. We had nothing to do. He would go wandering all over the place. And for fear that this might lead to trouble, we had him look after the peach orchard. Once again, he flouted the law by stealing and eating every single one of the big peaches from the old trees. When the banquet was to be held, he was not invited, as his position was purely an honorary one. So he played a trick on the barefoot immortal, went to the banquet looking like him, ate all the immortal delicacies, and drank all the immortal liquor. On top of this, he stole Lord Laozi's pills of immortality and some imperial liquor, which he took to his mountain for the monkeys to enjoy. This made us very angry, so we sent 100,000 heavenly troops to spread heaven and earth nets and subdue him. But we have received no reports today, so we do not know whether we have been victorious. When the Bodhisattva heard this, she said to Huion the novice, "Hurry down from heaven to the mountain of flowers and fruit and find out about the military situation. If you meet with any opposition, you may do your bit to help, but the important thing is to bring an accurate report back." Huion the novice straightened his robes, took his iron staff, left the palace by cloud, and went straight to the mountain. He saw that with the layer upon layer of heaven and earth nets, and the men holding bells and shouting passwords at the gates of the camp, the cordon round the mountain was watertight. Huion stopped and called, "Heavenly soldiers at the gates of the camp, I would trouble you to report that I, Moxa, the second son of Heavenly King Li, also known as Huion, the senior disciple of Huan Yin of the Southern Sea, have come to ask about the military situation." Then the divine soldiers of the 5 mountains inside the camp went in through the gates of the headquarters, where the rat, the cock, the horse, and the hare stars reported the news to the commander of the Central Court. Heavenly King Li sent a flag of command with the order that the heaven and earth nets were to be opened to let Huion in. The east was just beginning to grow light as Huion followed the flag in and bowed to Heavenly King Li and the other 4 heavenly kings. "Where have you come from, my son?" asked Heavenly King Li. "Your stupid son accompanied the Bodhisattva to the peach banquet, and when she found the banquet deserted and nobody at the Jade Pool, she took me and the other immortals to see the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor told her that you, father, and the other kings had gone down to the lower world to capture this monkey fiend. As the Jade Emperor has received no news all day on the outcome of this battle, the Bodhisattva sent me here to find out what has happened." "We arrived here and encamped yesterday," Heavenly King Li replied. "Then sent the 9 bright shiners to challenge the enemy to battle. But that wretch used such tremendous magic powers that the 9 bright shiners all came back defeated. Then we led out our own soldiers into action, and the wretch also drew up his line of battle. Our 100,000 heavenly soldiers fought an indecisive engagements with him until dusk, when he used a spell to divide up his body and force us back. When we withdrew our forces and held an investigation, we found that we had only captured wolves, tigers, leopards, and so on, and had not even taken half a monkey fiend. We have not yet given battle today." Before he had finished speaking, someone appeared out of the gates of the headquarters to report that the great sage was outside at the head of a crowd of monkey spirits, clamoring for battle. The 4 other heavenly kings, Heavenly King Li and Prince Neza, were all committing their forces, but Moxa said, "Father, when your stupid son was instructed by the Bodhisattva to come here and find out the news, I was also told that if there was a battle, I could do my bit to help. May I please go and see what sort of a great sage he is, untalented though I am? My boy, said Heavenly Kingly, you have been cultivating your conduct with the Bodhisattva for some years now, so I suppose that you must have acquired some magic powers. But do be very careful. The splendid Prince Moxa hitched up his embroidered robes and charged out through the gates of the headquarters, waving his iron staff with both hands. Which of you is the great sage equaling heaven? He shouted. I am, answered the great sage, brandishing his as-you-will cudgel. But who do you think you are, asking a question like that? I am Prince Moxa, the second son of Heavenly King Li, and I am now a disciple and a guard before the throne of the Bodhisattva Guanyin. My Buddhist name is Huion. Why have you come here to see me instead of staying in the Southern Sea and cultivating your conduct? Asked the great sage, and Moxa replied, My teacher sent me here to find out about the military situation, but now that I've seen your savagery, I've come to capture you. You talk big, don't you? Said the great sage. Well then, don't go away. Try a taste of my cudgel. Moxa, not in the least frightened, struck at him with his iron staff. It was a fine fight they fought, halfway up the mountainside outside the gates of the headquarters. The staves were matched, but made of different iron. The weapons clashed, but their masters were not the same. One was a wayward immortal known as the Great Sage, the other a true dragon disciple of Huan Yin. The cast iron staff, beaten with 1,000 hammers, had been forged by the art of the Ding and the Jia. The as-you-will cudgel once anchored the Milky Way. As the treasure stilling the sea, its magic power was great. When the two met, they were well matched indeed, and they parried and lunged at each other without end. The sinister cudgel, infinitely murderous, could whirl round your waist as quick as the wind. The spear-catching staff, never yielding an opening, was irresistible, parrying to the left and right. On the one side, the flags and banners fly. On the other side, the camel drums roll. 10,000 heavenly generals and multiple encirclement. A cave of monkey devils densely packed together. Monstrous fogs and evil clouds over the earth, while the smoke of the deadly battle rises to the sky. Yesterday's fighting was bad enough. Today's struggle is even worse. The admirable skills of the Monkey King put Moxa to flight, utterly defeated. After they had fought some 50 or 60 rounds, Huion's arm and shoulders were numbed and aching, and he could resist the great sage no longer. Waving his staff in a feint, he turned away and ran. The great sage then withdrew his monkey soldiers and encamped outside the gates of the cave. The big and little heavenly soldiers at the gates of the other camp received Huion and let him go straight to the headquarters, where he gasped and panted for breath as he said to the 4 heavenly kings, Li the pagoda bearer, and his brother, Prince Neza, "What a great sage! What a great sage! His magic powers are too much for me. He beat me." Startled by this news, Heavenly King Li had a request for reinforcements written and sent the strong-armed Devil King and Prince Moxa up to heaven to submit. Not daring to waste a moment, the two messengers rushed out through the heaven and earth nets and mounted their propitious clouds. A moment later, they arrived outside the Hall of Universal Brightness, where they greeted the four heavenly teachers, who led them to the Hall of Miraculous Mist and handed up their memorial. Prince Moxa, or Huion, did homage to the Bodhisattva, who asked him what he had found. As you instructed me, I went to the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit, reported Huion, asked them to open the gates of the heaven and earth net, saw my father, and told him of the orders you had given me. His Majesty, my father, said that they fought against the Monkey King yesterday, but did not capture a single monkey spirit, only tigers, leopards, lions, elephants, and so on. While he was telling me this, the Monkey King demanded battle again, so your disciple fought some 50 or 60 rounds against him with my iron staff, but I was no match for him. He beat me and drove me back to the camp. This is why my father has sent me and the strong-armed Devil King up to heaven to ask for reinforcements. The Bodhisattva lowered her head in deep thought. The Jade Emperor opened the memorial and saw that it contained a request for help. This intolerable monkey spirit has enough tricks to fight off 100,000 heavenly soldiers, he observed with a smile. Heavenly King Li has asked for reinforcements. Which heavenly soldiers should I send him? Before the words were out of his mouth, Wan Yin put her hands together and said, "Do not worry, Your Majesty. I can recommend a god to capture this monkey." Which god? The Jade Emperor asked, and the Bodhisattva replied, "Your Majesty's nephew, the illustrious sage and true Lord Erlang, who is now living at the Wanjingkou in Guangzhou, enjoying the incense that the lower beings burned to him. In the past, he exterminated the 6 bogies. He has the brothers of Plum Hill and the 1,200 straw-headed gods, and his magical powers are enormous. He will agree to be sent, though he would not obey a summons to come here. So Your Majesty might like to issue a decree ordering him to take his troops to the rescue." The Jade Emperor then issued such a decree and sent the strong-armed Devil King to deliver it. The Devil King took the decree, mounted his cloud, and went straight to Guanjingkou. He reached the temple of the True Lord within an hour. When the demon judges guarding the gate went in to report that there was an envoy from heaven standing outside with an imperial decree, Erlang went with the brothers to receive the decree outside the gates, and incense was burned as he read. The great sage equaling heaven, the monkey fiend of the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit, has rebelled. Because he stole peaches, wine, and pills while in heaven and wrecked the peach banquet, we have dispatched 100,000 heavenly soldiers and 18 heaven and earth nets to surround the mountain and force him to submit, but we have not yet succeeded. We do now therefore especially appoint our worthy nephew and his sworn brothers to go to the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit and give their help in eliminating him. When you succeed, large rewards and high office shall be yours." Erlang was delighted. He told the envoy from heaven to go back and report that he would be putting his sword to the Emperor's service. We need not describe how the Devil King reported back to heaven. The true Lord Erlang called the 6 sworn brothers of Plum Hill, Marshals Kang, Zhang, Yao, and Li, and Generals Kuo Shin and Xi Zhang, together before the hall. "The Jade Emperor has just ordered us to the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit to subdue a monkey fiend," he said. "You are all coming with me. The brothers were eager to go, and mustering their divine troops, they unleashed a gale wind. In an instant they had crossed the eastern ocean, riding eagles and leading dogs, pulling their bows and drawing their crossbows, and had reached the mountain of flowers and fruit. Finding that the many layers of heaven and earth nets were impenetrable, Erlang shouted, "Listen, all you generals in charge of the heaven and earth nets. I am the true Lord and the illustrious sage Erlang, and I have been sent here by the Jade Emperor to capture the monkey fiend. Open the gates of the camp and let me in at once." Each line of gods forming the nets let them through, and the 4 other heavenly kings and heavenly King Li all came to welcome him outside the headquarters. When the introductions were over, he asked how the fighting had gone, and the heavenly kings gave him a full account of what had happened. Now that I, the little sage, have come here, I shall have to match a few transformations with him, said Erlang with a smile. I hope that all you gentlemen will maintain a close cordon with your heaven and earth nets, but don't screen off the top of the mountain. Then I'll be able to fight him. If he beats me, I shan't need the help of you gentlemen, as I have my brothers to support me. And if I beat him, I won't have to trouble you to tie him up, as my brothers can do it. I would just like to ask Heavenly King Li to stand in the sky and operate this fiend-detecting mirror. I'm worried that if he's beaten, he may go and hide somewhere. So you will have to give me a clear view of him and not let him get away. The heavenly kings stayed in the 4 quarters, and all the heavenly soldiers were drawn up in their battle positions. The true Lord Erlang went out at the head of the 4 marshals and the 2 generals, making 7 sworn brothers with himself included, to challenge the enemy to battle. And he ordered his other officers to defend the camp firmly and keep the eagles and dogs under control. All the straw-headed gods acknowledged the order. Erlang then went outside of the water curtain cave, where he saw the monkey hordes neatly drawn up in a coiled dragon battle line. In the middle of the central corpse stood a pole with a banner on it reading, "Great Sage equaling Heaven." What business has that loathsome fiend to call himself the equal of heaven? Erlang asked, and the 6 sworn brothers of Plum Hill replied, "Stop admiring him and challenge him to battle." When the junior monkeys at the gate of their camp saw the true Lord Erlang, they rushed back to report, whereupon the Monkey King took his gold-banded cudgel, adjusted his golden armor, put on his cloud-walking shoes, felt his golden helmet, leapt out through the gates of the camp. He saw at first sight how cool and remarkable Erlang looked, and how elegantly he was dressed. Indeed, his bearing was refined, his visage noble. His ears hung down to his shoulders, and his eyes shone. The hat on his head had 3 peaks and phoenixes flying, and his robe was of a pale goose yellow. His boots were lined with cloth of gold, dragons coiled round his socks. His jade belt was decorated with the 8 jewels. At his waist was a bow curved like a moon. In his hand, a double-edged trident. His axe had split open Peach Mountain when he rescued his mother. His bow had killed the twin phoenixes of Songluo. Widespread was his fame for killing the 8 bogies, and it had become one of Plum Hill's 7 sages. His heart was too lofty to acknowledge his relatives in heaven. In his pride, he went back to be a god at Guangzheng. He was the merciful and miraculous sage of the Red City, Erlang, whose transformations were numberless. When the great sage saw him, he laughed with delight, raised his gold-banded cudgel, and shouted, "Where are you from, little general, that you have the audacity to challenge me? You must be blind, you wretch, if you can't recognize me. I am the nephew of the Jade Emperor, and my title is Merciful and Miraculous King Erlang. I am here on imperial orders to arrest you, protector of the horses. You rebel against heaven, you reckless baboon." "Now I remember who you are," replied the great sage. "Some years ago, the Jade Emperor's younger sister wanted to be immortal and came down to the lower world, where she married a Mr. Yang and gave birth to a son who split the Peach Mountain open with his axe. Is that who you are? I should really fling you a few curses, but I've got no quarrel with you, and it would be a pity to kill you by hitting you with my cudgel. So why don't you hurry back, young sir, and tell those 4 heavenly kings of yours to come out." When the true Lord Erlang heard this, he burst out angrily. "Damned monkey! Where are your manners? Try this blade of mine!" The great sage dodged the blow and instantly raised his gold-banded club to hit back. There was a fine battle between the two of them. The merciful god Erlang, the great sage equaling heaven. One is the handsome monkey king, the proud deceiver of his enemies. The other, a true pillar, the unknown subduer. When the two met, they were both in a fighting mood. He who had no respect before, today, learned a sense of proportion. The iron staff raced with the flying dragons. The divine cudgel seemed like a dancing phoenix, parrying to the left, thrusting to the right, advancing to meet a blow, flashing behind. The brothers of Plum Hill added to one side's might, while the other has the 4 stalwart generals to transmit orders. As the flags wave and the drums roll, each side is as one. Battle cries and gongs raise everyone's morale. The 2 steel blades each watch for their chance, but neither leaves an opening as they come and go. The gold-banded cudgel, the treasure from the sea, can fly and transform itself to win the victory. A moment's delay and life is lost. A single mistake will be the last. After Erlang and the great sage had fought over 300 rounds, the outcome of the fight was still undecided. Erlang braced himself, and with a shake became 10,000 fathoms tall. In his hands, his 2-bladed trident looked like the peaks of Mount Hua. His face was black, his fangs were long, and his hair was bright red. He looked ferociously evil. He hacked at the great sage's head. The great sage, also resorting to magic, gave himself a body as big as Erlang's and a face as frightening. He raised his as-you-will gold-banded cudgel, which was now like the pillar of heaven on the summit of the Kunlun mountain, to ward off Erlang's blow. This reduced the 2 ape-field marshals Ma and Liu to such trembling terror that they could no longer wave their banners, while the gibbon generals Sang and Ba were too scared to use their swords. On the other side, Kang, Zhang, Yao, Li, Guoshen, and Ji Zhang threw the straw-headed gods into an assault on the Water Curtain Cave, with the dogs and eagles unleashed and their bows and crossbows drawn. This attack put the 4 monkey generals to flight, and 2,000 or 3,000 devils were captured. The monkeys threw away their spears, tore off their armor, abandoned their swords and halberds, and fled screaming. Some went up the mountain, and some returned to the cave, like roosting birds frightened by an owl, or stars scattered across the sky. That is all we have to say about the Sworn Brothers' victory. The story goes on to tell how the true Lord Erlang and the great sage, having turned themselves into figures on the scale of heaven and earth, were locked in battle when the great sage was suddenly appalled to notice that the monkey fiends in his cap had scattered in terror. Putting off his magic appearance, he broke away and fled, his cudgel in hand. Seeing him go, the true Lord Erlang hurried after him with long strides. "Where are you going?" he asked. "If you surrender at once, your life will be spared." The great sage, who had no heart left for the fight, was running as fast as he could. As he approached the mouth of the cave, he came up against Marshals Kang, Zhang, Yao, and Li, as well as Generals Guo Xin and Ji Zhang, blocking his way at the head of their armies. "Where are you going, damned monkey?" they asked, and the great sage hastily squeezed his gold-banded cudgel till it was the size of an embroidery needle and hid it behind his ear. Then he shook himself, turned into a sparrow, flew up into a tree, and perched on one of its branches. The 6 sworn brothers looked for him very hard, but could find him nowhere. So they all shouted in unison, "The monkey fiend has escaped! The monkey fiend has escaped!" As they were shouting, the true Lord Erlang arrived and asked them, "Brothers, where had you chased him to when he disappeared?" "We had him surrounded here just now, but he vanished." Erlang opened his phoenix eyes till they were quite round and looked about him. He saw that the great sage had changed himself into a sparrow and was perching on a branch. So he put off his magical appearance, threw down his divine trident, and took the pellet bow from his waist. Then he shook himself, changed into a kite, spread his wings, and swooped up into attack. As soon as the great sage saw this, he took off and turned himself into a big cormorant, soaring up into the sky. Erlang saw him, and with a quick shake of his feathers and twist of his body, he transformed himself into a crane and pierced the clouds as he tried to catch him. The great sage landed on a mountain stream and, changing into a fish, plunged into the water. Erlang, who had pursued him to the bank of the stream, could see no trace of him. "That macaque must have gone into the water and changed himself into some kind of fish or shrimp," he thought. "I'll transform myself again, then I'll get him." He turned into a fish hawk and soared above the lower reaches of the stream and the first waves of the sea. He waited there for a long time. Meanwhile, the great sage, who was in the form of a fish, swam with the stream until he noticed a big bird flying above him. It was quite like a blue kite, except that its feathers were not blue. It was quite like an egret, but it had no crest on its head. And it was quite like a stork, but its legs were not red. That must be what Erlang turned himself into while waiting for me, he thought, turned round quickly, and went away. The fish who turned round, thought Erlang when he saw this, is like a carp, but its tail isn't red. It's like a mandarin fish, but I can't see the pattern on its scales. It's like a snakehead, but without a star on its head. And it's like a bream, but it has no needles on its gills. Why did it turn round the moment it saw me? It must be that monkey transformed. He swooped down and snapped at the great sage with his beak. The great sage leapt out of the water, turned into a water snake, swam to the bank, and slid into the grass. Failing to catch the fish in his beak, Erlang saw a snake jump out of the water and realized it was the Great Sage. He changed himself at once into a red-crusted gray crane and stretched out his long beak that it was like a pair of pointed pincers to eat up the water snake. The snake gave a jump and became a bustard, standing stiffly on a smart weed-covered bank. When Erlang saw that he had turned himself into so low a creature, for the bustard is the lowest and lewdest of the birds, not caring whether it mates with phoenix, eagle, or crow, he kept his distance, reverted to his own body, went away to fetch and load his pellet bow, and knocked him flying with a single shot. The Great Sage seized the chance as he rolled down the precipice to crouch there and turn himself into a temple to a local god. He opened his mouth wide to look like the entrance to the temple and turned his teeth into the doors. He made his tongue into the statue of a god and his eyes into windows and lattice. He could not tuck his tail away, so he stuck it behind him as a flagpole. When Erlang came to the foot of the precipice, he could not see the bustard he had shot over, and anxiously opening his phoenix eyes, he looked carefully around and saw a temple with a flagpole at the back. "It must be that monkey over there," he observed with a smile. "He's trying to fool me again. I've seen temples before, but never one with the flagpole at the back. I'm sure it is that beast up to his tricks again. If he'd managed to lure me in, he'd have been able to get me with a single bite. Of course I won't go in. I'll smash his windows in with my fist, then I'll kick his door down." Vicious, really vicious, thought the Great Sage with horror when he heard him say this. Those doors are my teeth, and the windows are my eyes. And if he smashes my teeth and bashes in my eyes, what sort of a state will that leave me in? With a tiger leap, he disappeared into the sky. The true Lord Erlang rushed around wildly, but he could only see his 6 sworn brothers who crowded round him, and asked, "Elder brother, did you catch the Great Sage?" "That monkey turned himself into a temple to fool me," he replied with a laugh. "Just when I was going to smash his windows and kick in his door, he gave a jump and vanished without a trace. Strange, very strange." They were all astonished, and though they looked around, all they could see no sign of him. Wow. "Brothers, you patrol this area while I go look for him above," said Erlang with a quick jump. He was riding a cloud in midair. When he saw Heavenly King Li holding high the fiend-detecting mirror and standing with Neza at the edge of the cloud, the true lord asked, "Your Heavenly Majesty, have you seen that Monkey King?" "He hasn't come up here, and I've been keeping a lookout for him with this mirror," the Heavenly King replied. The true Lord Erlang then told him how he had used transformations and magic to capture the monkey hordes. "He changed into a temple," Erlang went on, "but got away when I was going to hit him." On hearing this, Heavenly King Li turned the fiend-detecting mirror in all 4 directions, then said with a laugh, "Hurry away, true lord, hurry away. The monkey made himself invisible to get through the encirclement, and he's gone to your palace, Wanzhangkou." Erlang took his divine trident and returned to Wanzhangkou in pursuit. The Great Sage had already arrived there, changed himself into the likeness of the god Erlang with a shake of his body, put away his cloud, and gone into the temple. The demon judges did not realize who he really was, so they all kowtowed and welcomed him. He took his seat in the middle of the temple and inspected the offerings, the beef, mutton, and pork presented by one Li Hu, the ex voto promised by a Zhang Long, the letter from a Zhaojia asking for a son, and one Qian Bing's prayer for recovery from illness. As he was looking round, it was announced that another Lord Erlang had arrived. All the demon judges hurried to look, and they were all astonished. The true Lord Erlang asked, "Has a so-called great sage equaling heaven been here?" "We haven't seen any great sages," they replied. "Only another god who's looking round inside." The true Lord rushed in through the gates, and as soon as the great sage saw him, he reverted to his own appearance and said, "There's no point in shouting, sir. The temple's mine now." The true Lord raised his double-bladed trident and swung at the Monkey King's head. But the Monkey King dodged the blow by magic, took his embroidery needle, shook it till it was thick as a bowl, and rushed forward to meet the attack. Shouting and yelling, they fought their way out through the gates and went on fighting through the mists and clouds all the way back to the mountain of flowers and fruit. The 4 heavenly kings and all their soldiers were so alarmed that they kept an even tighter guard. Marshals Kang and Zhang and the others came to meet the true Lord and combined their efforts to surround the handsome Monkey King. But of this, no more for now. After the strong-armed Demon King had sent the true Lord Erlang and his 6 sworn brothers with their troops to capture the fiend, he'd gone back to heaven to report. He found the Jade Emperor, the Bodhisattva, Guan Yin, the Queen Mother, and all his immortal ministers in conference. Although Erlang has joined the fight, we have had no reports on it all day, the Jade Emperor said. Guan Yin put her hands together and replied, "May I suggest that your majesty go out through the southern gate of heaven with Lord Laozi to see for yourself what is happening?" "A good idea," said the emperor, and he went by chariot with Laozi, the Queen Mother, and all the immortal ministers to the southern gate of heaven. Here they were met by a number of heavenly soldiers and strongmen. When the gates were opened and they looked into the distance, they saw that the heavenly hosts were spread all around in a net. Heavenly King Li and Neza were standing in midair with the fiend-detecting mirror, and Erlang was struggling with the great sage within the encircling ring. The Bodhisattva addressed Laozi and asked, "What do you think of the god Erlang I recommended? He really does have divine powers. He's just got that great sage cornered, and all he has to do now is to catch him. If I give him a little help now, he will certainly be able to do it." "What weapon would you use, Bodhisattva? How could you help him?" Laozi asked. "I'll drop that pure vase of willow twigs onto the monkey's head. Even if it doesn't kill him, it will knock him off balance and enable the little sage to catch him. That vase of yours is made of porcelain, and if you hit the target, that will be fine. But if it were to miss his head and smash onto his iron club, it would be shattered. Just hold your hand while I give him a little help." "What sort of weapon do you have?" the Bodhisattva asked, and Lord Laozi replied, "I've got one all right." He pulled up his sleeve and took a bracelet off his right arm. "This weapon," he said, "is made of tempered steel to which I have added the magic elixir. It preserves my miraculous essence, can transform itself, is proof against fire and water, and can snare anything. One of its names is Diamond Jade. and the other is Diamond Noose. When I went out through the Han Pass some years ago to turn into a foreigner and become a Buddha, I have a great way to thank it for. Great deal to thank it for. It's the best protection at any time. Just watch while I throw it down and hit him. As soon as he had finished speaking, he threw it down from outside the heavenly gate, and it fell into the camp on the mountain of flowers and fruit, hitting the Monkey King neatly on the head. The Monkey King was too preoccupied with fighting the 7 sages to notice this weapon falling on him from heaven, and when it struck him on the forehead, he lost his balance and stumbled, then picked himself up and started to run. The slim dog of the god Erlang caught him up and bit him in the calf, bringing him down again. As he lay on the ground, he cursed at the dog. "You don't bother your own master, damn you! Why pick on me to bite?" He rolled over and tried unsuccessfully to get up, but the 7 sages all held him down, roped him up, and put a sickle-shaped blade round his collar bone to prevent him from making any more transformations. Lord Laozi then recovered his diamond jade and invited the Jade Emperor, Guanyin, the Queen Mother, and all the immortal ministers to return to the Hall of Miraculous Mist. Down below, Heavenly King Li and the other 4 Heavenly Kings assembled their troops and pulled up the stockade. They went over to congratulate the little sage and said, "It was all thanks to you, little sage." No, it was thanks to the great blessings of His Celestial Majesty and the might of all the gods. It was nothing I did, replied the little sage. No time to talk now, elder brother, said the 4 marshals Kang, Zhang, Yao, and Li. Let's take this wretch up to heaven to see the Jade Emperor and ask what is to be done with him. Worthy brothers, Erlang replied, you never received any heavenly commissions, so it would not be right for you to see the Jade Emperor. The heavenly soldiers can escort him while I go up there with the heavenly kings to report back. You should comb this mountain with your troops, and when you've finished, go back to Guanzhengkou. When I've asked for our rewards, I'll come back and we can celebrate together. The 4 marshals and 2 generals accepted their orders, and the rest mounted their clouds and went to heaven triumphantly, singing victory songs. Before long, they were outside the Hall of Universal Brightness. The heavenly teachers reported to the throne that the 4 heavenly kings and the rest of them had captured the monkey devil, the great sage equaling heaven, and were now waiting to be summoned. The Jade Emperor then issued an edict ordering the strong-armed Demon King and the heavenly soldiers to march him to the Demon Beheading Tower, where the wretch was to have his body chopped to mincemeat. Goodness! The bully and cheat now meets with a bitter punishment. The heroic spirit must now come to an end. If you don't know what happened to the Monkey King's life, then listen to the explanation in the next installment. Chapter 7. The great sage escapes from the 8 trigrams furnace. The mind ape is fixed beneath 5 elements mountain. Wealth and honor, glory and fame are predetermined by fate. No one should act against conscience to covet any of them. Far-going and deep are the good results of true enlightenment and loyalty. Heaven punishes all wild and wicked deeds, if not at once, then later on. Ask the Lord of the East the reason why disasters now strike him. It is because his ambition was high, his plans far-reaching. He did not respect authority, and he smashed convention. The story goes on to tell how the great sage equaling heaven was escorted by the hosts of heavenly soldiers to the demon beheading tower and tied to the demon subduing pillar. They hacked at him with sabers, sliced at him with axes, lunged at him with spears, and cut him with swords. but they were unable to inflict a single wound on him. The Southern Dipper angrily ordered all the gods of the Department of Fire to set him alight and burn him up, but he would not ignite. He told the gods of the Department of Thunder to nail splinters of thunder into him. But however hard they tried, they could not harm a hair of his body. The strong-armed Demon King and the rest of them then reported this to the throne. "Your Majesty," they said, "this great sage has learned somewhere or other how to protect himself by magic. Although your subjects have hacked at him with sabers, sliced at him with axes, struck at him with thunder, and tried to burn him with fire, we have not been able to harm a hair of his body. What are we to do?" "How can we deal with a wretch like this?" the Jade Emperor asked, and the Lord Lao Tzu replied to this in a memorial. "That monkey has eaten the peaches of immortality, drunk the imperial liquor, and stolen the pills of elixir. He swallowed those 5 gourds of pills of mine, fresh ones and mature ones alike. Now we have used the fire of samadhi on him, which has tempered his body and made it a diamond, one that cannot be harmed. The best course would be to let me take him and put him in my 8 trigrams furnace, where I can refine out my elixir with the civil and martial fire and reduce him to ashes at the same time." The Jade Emperor then ordered the 6 Dings and the 6 Jias to untie him and hand him over to the Lord Lao Tzu, who took him away in obedience to the imperial decree. At the same time, the Jade Emperor summoned the illustrious sage Erlang to his presence and rewarded him with 100 golden flowers, 100 jars of imperial liquor, 100 pills of elixir, rare jewels, lustrous pearls, brocade, embroidery, and other gifts to share with his sworn brothers. The true Lord Erlang thanked him for this bounty and returned to Wanzhengkou. When he reached the Tushita Palace, Lord Lao Tzu had the great sage untied, took the hook from his collarbone, pushed him into the 8 trigrams furnace, and ordered the priests in charge of it, and the fire boys, to fan the fire up to refine him. Now this furnace was made up of the 8 trigrams: Qian, Kan, Zhen, Zhen, Sun, Li, Kun, and Dui. So he squeezed himself into the palace of Sun, as Sun was the wind, and where there was wind, there could be no fire. All that happened was that the wind stirred up the smoke, which made both his eyes red and left him somewhat blind with the illness called fire eyes with golden pupils. Time soon passed, and without him realizing it, the 7 times 7, or 49 days had passed, and Lord Lao Tzu's fire had reached the required temperature and burned for long enough. One day the furnace was opened for the elixir to be taken out. The great sage, who was shielding his eyes with both hands and wiping away his tears, heard a noise at the top of the furnace. He looked hard and saw daylight, and, unable to stand being in there a moment longer, leapt out of the furnace, kicked it over with a crash, and was off. In the ensuing chaos, the fire boys, the keepers of the furnace, the Dings, and the Jias all tried to grab him, but he knocked them all down. He was like a white-browed tiger gone berserk, a single-horned dragon, raving mad. Lord Lao Tzu rushed up to seize him, but was thrown head over heels as the great sage freed himself. He took the as-you-will cudgel from his ear, and shook it in the wind till it was thick as a bowl, and once more created total chaos in the palace of heaven, not caring in the least what he did. He laid about him to such effect that the 9 bright shiners shut their windows and doors, and not a sign was to be seen of the 4 heavenly kings. Marvelous monkey spirit. As the poem has it, his primordial body matches an earlier heaven, completely natural throughout 10,000 ages, vast and passive, blended with the great monad, always immobile, known as the prime mystery. After so much refining in the furnace, he is not lead or mercury. Having lived long outside the ordinary, he is a natural immortal. His changes are inexhaustible, and still he has more. So say nothing about the 3 refuges or the 5 abstentions. Another poem says, "A single point of magic light can fill the whole of space. Likewise that staff of his, longer or shorter, depending on his needs, upright or horizontal, it can shrink or grow." Yet another poem runs, "To the ape's immortal body is matched a human mind. That the mind is an ape is deeply meaningful." It was quite true that the great sage equaled heaven. The appointment as proctor of the horse showed no discernment. Horse and ape together make mind and thought. Bind them tightly together and do not seek elsewhere. When all phenomena are reduced to truth, they follow a single pattern. Like the Tathagata reaching nirvana under the 2 trees. This time the Monkey King made no distinctions between high and humble as he laid about him to east and west with his iron club. Not a single god opposed him. He fought his way into the Hall of Universal Brightness outside the Hall of Miraculous Mist, where the kingly spirit officer, the lieutenant of the helpful sage and true lord, fortunately, was on duty. When he saw the